I'm Stephen Hicks, Executive Director of the Center for Ethics and Entrepreneurship here at Rockford College, and with me today is Dr. Terry Noel, professor at Illinois State University. Dr. Noel is here to speak to our Business and Economics Ethics class on the theme of the virtuous entrepreneur. So I wanted to ask a few questions of Dr. Noel to give a sense of what his talk was about. In your talk to the class, you mentioned that the next generation of students, whether they think of themselves this way or not, they are going to be entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. I think that entrepreneurship is not just a fad, it's something that is a fundamental shift in our economic and cultural landscape. Part of it is just the fact that technology has changed so much. The advent of the internet in 1994, when it first became really commercially available, has changed the way we do business in every respect, not just the business of the internet, but every kind of business is affected. I think we've seen a lot more turmoil and instability in the sense that business organizations really don't last the number of decades that we used to think of in maybe our grandparents' generation.
Sure.
So we're going to find, I think, that people going out into their adult working lives now will face a world in which they're marketing in some sense themselves as a bundle of resources and capabilities.
Right.
And they may contract with any number of companies over any period of many years, bringing to bear their skills to add value to companies, but probably not in as long-term relationships as we're used to seeing.
Okay. When you think of people functioning entrepreneurial that way throughout their career life, the character traits and the skill sets that people will have to have in order to be successful in that then becomes a list of virtues. And you're contrasting that way of thinking about virtue with a more traditional way of thinking about virtue. Virtue as avoiding doing bad.
Yeah.
What is the more traditional way of thinking about virtue that you're contrasting to?
Well, I think that virtue has traditionally been thought of as avoiding doing evil. And we have a long tradition of the good person being the person who is inclined not to indulge in all those naughty things that we really want to do, but we know we shouldn't. And while that view of virtue has its role, I think that it's very limited in the sense that one could conceivably never do anything wrong, but never do anything positive. I think we need to talk more in our business ethics classes and other classes as well about what I think of as the positive virtues. People who create wealth and value for other people, and creating that kind of wealth and value for others involves more than just avoiding wrong. It means doing things positive, such as having the courage to see if a new product will be successful in the market. Being creative, going against the norm, and having the tenacity to see things through.
Right. You made a contrast to positive psychology, noting that through much of psychology's history as a discipline, it was focused on the negative, on problem cases in human psychology. But there's a movement of positive psychology about what it takes to be a flourishing, fully functioning human being. So the newer conception of ethics that you're pushing, the positive ethic, focusing on an entrepreneurial virtue, would be emphasizing things like courage and tenacity and other traits.
Mm-hmm.
What other major traits would you put on the list that would count as virtues over and above you mentioned the creativity and the tenacity and courage, obviously, to take the leap.
Right.
Yeah.
I think self-respect and independence of thought are two that really come to mind for me. By self-respect, I mean a fundamental recognition that we as human beings, our highest calling, I think, is to honor ourselves in life, to recognize that we as individual human beings are worthwhile, and that it's okay to do what you love. And by the way, if you get very wealthy doing that, that's okay too. And I'm not saying that is a necessary component of being virtuous, but it certainly can be a part of it. So just having the self-respect to say, yes, I'm capable of this, I want to do that, and by golly, I'm going to be proud when I do accomplish this.
Nice.
Independence of thought, to me, is something that all of us say is like if I ask you if you're a good driver, if I asked 100 people, are you a good driver, are you above average or below average, then we'd get a vast majority of people.
We're all above
so
average.
are we going to say, no, I'm not an independent thinker, I just follow what everybody else says? I mean, nobody's going to admit that. But on some level, we all are prone to kind of going along with the cultural flow and not really examining things ourselves and coming to our own conclusions and really earning our own trust. Entrepreneurs, I think, are disposed to hear other points of view, but in the end really decide, no, my judgment is as good as anybody's, and I'm going to act on it. And that's the key thing that separates the entrepreneur from the armchair entrepreneur.
In addition to all of those things, one of the points that you emphasized was the lesson of failure. And that obviously entrepreneurs have courage and tenacity, but in many cases it does blow up in their faces. And you said most successful entrepreneurs have in fact failed miserably once or twice, and that there are great lessons to be learned from that. What would you take those to be from your own experience with the martial arts studio?
Well, we all get the lesson from probably our parents that it's okay to fail and make mistakes. Well, of course, that's the surface lesson, but in reality, we get reinforced strongly for not making mistakes and not risking. So we have kind of a contradiction. Buried within us is this deep fear of failure, even though we know on some level it's necessary to fail in order to prosper. In my own case, I had a fairly straightforward life, went to liberal arts college, majored in philosophy and economics, farmed for 3 years after I got out of school on a family farm. And then I went out and opened my own martial arts studio. Excited about it. Oh, geez, it was great. And I was out on my own making decisions, and I felt alive. And I just got crushed. I mean, I just went through my entire savings, lost everything. It was a devastating experience in so many ways. And I would not wish it upon anyone, nor would I wish it upon myself. But there's the paradox, because after I went through that, I laugh with my students sometimes and say I couldn't tell this story for 15 years without crying. But now I recognize that I got crushed, but I'm still alive. Nobody got hurt except maybe lost a little money, me mostly. And what I learned from being able to survive that was that failure is so stigmatized, and that I could never possibly have engaged in the things I engage in now that I enjoy so much had I not gotten out there and gotten clobbered and realized that you survive that and you go on. So getting really clobbered opened up so many doors that wouldn't have opened had I not experienced that.
Is it a point about resilience in the face of being clobbered?
Yeah.
Being able to come back and start again?
Yeah, I think you can fail productively. I think that resilience, it's like the joke about the guy hitting himself in the head with a hammer, and somebody says, why are you doing that? It's just because it feels so good when I stop. We can do dumb things over and over and call ourselves, well, I got out and I failed. When we see any number of people that fail at things, they just keep doing the same stupid thing over and over. I think what separates the entrepreneur is they look at failure as a productive thing. So it's not like we're just going to tenaciously keep after the same strategies that don't work. We're going to go out and find out, is this product going to fly? Oh man, I got clobbered on this one. I got just annihilated. But you know what? I found another way to do it. And actually that's what happened in my martial arts studio. After I got wiped out, I did the only sane thing to do, moved to Florida. Why that? Well, gosh, when you got nothing to lose, so I moved to Florida. And I got into the health club industry, and one night I'm walking around the health club, and I see a room that had been set aside for aerobics when aerobics was first popular. I looked at that empty room, and I looked at my watch. I said, it's 8:30. There's nobody in there. So a couple of things clicked, and I went to the manager and said, can I teach karate in there? He goes, you mean after the classes are over? Yeah. Yeah, I won't even charge you for the space. I made more money teaching martial arts that way than I ever would have with my own business. But I would never have seen that opportunity had I not gone out and failed the other way.
And toward the end of your talk to the class today, one of the points you were emphasizing was deep human need, in your judgment, to have a great challenge in your life, that the persistence and the tenacity and the courage and the independence of judgment and facing failure and the possibility of failure are deeply a part of who we are, and that entrepreneurship then taps into that.
Yeah, I think that we somehow, as human beings, think we want one thing when very often that's not exactly what we want. We think of pleasure as kind of the goal in life, as if that's happiness. But for all of the good it does us to relax and enjoy ourselves or enjoy some experience passively, a life full of that would, I think, be dreadful, because at some point, imagine getting everything you want when you want it right then. It sounds good, but if you'll think that through a little while, how soon would that become really boring? And I think it just runs counter to what we are as human beings. I think that deep within us is the need to challenge ourselves, and qualitatively, the prize, as it were, when you do achieve something, is so much richer when we've gone through a challenge. And think of it this way, the view from the top of the mountain looks a lot different if you took a helicopter up as opposed to walking up.
Nice analogy.
Yeah, and I think with entrepreneurship it's like that. So ironically, while we want to avoid the pain, like I did with losing all my money, it's only those experiences that open the door to the richer experiences of long-term goals. And I think as we face students in our classes going out into the adult world, I think it's important to give them a heads up on that one. That's quite natural for them to get beat up before they find the really rich rewards in life.
Nicely put. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Noel. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.